This is Sarah from Little Stab Studios again, and today we are going to be going over backstitching, beads, and French knots. And I'm starting things out a little bit different than usual, and that is because I want to try to cover the most amount of topics without wasting a bunch of time getting in all the text and things like that. And it's a little bit hard to read the text in this view. So if we switch it over to framed view, it becomes a little bit clearer. I've actually typed these up in Petit, and I'm going to show you how I did that real quick when I type in the title of this piece. And to do that, we just go over to text as usual. Instead of all these numbers like I did before, I thought we would do Backstitch guide. And so far this is in size 8. I think that's going to be a little bit small for the title, so I'll switch this to 16, which bumps it up to twice as large. But then I'm going to click Petit. Bam! It's going to take up 1/4 of a stitch for each of these squares. So if I hit paste, you can see that it's actually a lot smaller than it looks. If I zoom in, zoom, you can see that for every single one of these squares that make up the text are only taking up 1/4 of those. And you can also edit this yourself if you go over to these little purple, blue, red, and green markers, and this will add 1/4 stitches. So for example, if I thought that, and I guess when you do it this large, it looks pretty good, but on some of the smaller ones, I did have to edit it. And just for example, if I wanted the K to have a little bit more of a leg down here, I can just click next to it, and it's going to add a 1/4 stitch there. And you can do this with any color. You can undo it. This is affected just like regular stitches. It's not going to be affected by the undo backstitch and things like that we're going to be working with today. So it's not really the focus, but it's something I thought would be useful. So we are going to be focusing on backstitch, and the first thing I want to do is actually work with the palette, because some of the stuff we need to do involves adding multiple threads of the same color. So I will go ahead and hit palette, and we're going to remove all unused threads from the palette. And now I've only got 4 colors left: the yellow, the pink that I just used, and I've already got 2 blacks, which might confuse some of you. And the reason that I've got 2 blacks is because the first one has 2 strands like usual, and then the second one, I've already got ready my 6-strand version of black. And before I do anything else, I'm actually going to add 4 more so that I can have 1 through 6, 1 thread of black all the way up through 6 threads of black. And we need to go into add a thread, and we don't need to edit it too much in here. I just click black, add. You gotta click it every time. 4. So now we've got 4 different colors of black. And then I'm going to want to have a couple of reds later on, so I'm just going to pick some right up here. And then I also wanted to have a blue, so we'll just add 312 for that. I'm going to hit save, and now all of those are in here. And if I don't like the symbols, if I think that they're a little bit too similar, I can click on this, for example, and I can click right down here. It's going to pop up with a whole menu of symbols. All of the ones that are slightly pink are already being used, and I can click on any of the other ones and then click OK, and it will change the symbol. So I can click the moon, and then I'm going to click strands and click 1, so that way I know that only 1 strand is for this one, and I will leave the rest of the symbols the same. This one needs to be 3. And then we'll do 4, and last but not least, 5. And another thing real quick, I don't like having them all mixed up like that, just personal preference. So I'm going to go back up to palette, and I'm going to hit reorder the palette. And right up here, I can go by number, which makes me a lot happier. So the first thing that we're going to do now that we've got the palette all nice is we're going to demonstrate how backstitching looks with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strands. The program does this kind of automatically, and there's a little bit of difference, but it becomes pretty pronounced when you do 1 strand versus 6, for example. And probably you're not going to be doing that much backstitching with 6 strands of the same color, but for example's sake, I wanted to show you how you have to go about doing it, which is adding in 6 different shades of the same exact color. Now I clicked on this little 2-dashed line, and this is going to add a line of backstitching. I've just clicked once and then I dragged my mouse. So that looks, of course I ended up flipping it around. It did look good. There we go. That's fine. So that's going to be 1 strand. Then I go back up, double check. It's got 2 strands here. And again, I'm just going to drag that over. That's 6. Here's 3. You can also edit this under palette, under edit current thread if you'd like to, but it's pretty easy to edit it down here. So I usually do that. There's 4. And we've got 5. And back up to the square 6. Again, if we go to view, framed view, then suddenly it's a lot clearer how much thinner 1-stranded versus 6 strands. So it does take that into account when you are going to print the mock-up version. So now I want to do French knots. This is another thing that I hope they've made some adjustments to. Their French knots all look the same, even in the framed view, and when I've exported it to PDF, it looks the same as well. So it takes up 1 square, which, depending on how many strands, I think we all know that doesn't work that way. But as you can see, they all look the same. And then when I go to framed view, again, there's no difference in how they show a French knot for 1 strand of thread versus 6 strands. It is what it is. Again, you make notes in the pattern, and most cross-stitch designers aren't going to be having this many issues with French knots and backstitch, I would assume, unless you're doing a really detailed pattern, in which case you're probably going to want to have some explanatory notes as well. So now that we've done the French knots, I want to show beads off, and that's over here right next to French knots. And I think we could do them in a couple different colors just to show. They have the option to do 2mm beads all the way down to 10mm. So the 2mm are obviously going to be the smallest, and they're about the same size as the French knot. I'm not showing up pretty blue since it's so dark. You can choose any color that you'd like to for the beads though. So 2, 2.5, 3, and then go back up to the blue for a 5mm, down to pink for a 6, and I definitely need to give them more space since they're getting so much larger. So that's nice. I mean, the 10mm is 1 centimeter in length, and I guess if this is an inch, yeah, it's pretty accurate. So I don't want to be too picky. They did a good job with the beads. So there you go. If you want to add beads, you can do that. And again, I'm going to show you when you export it to a PDF what you want to click to make sure that those are showing up, okay? And now that we've done beads, I want to show a couple of the different ways that you can add backstitching. And we're going to do that actually by working on a little smiley face here, just real quick. So I'm going to add in some beads for the eyes since I can't do the French knot. The next one I want to show is not a running, oh yeah, they call this a running stitch, but it's actually a backstitch that continues. So if you click this, it's going to add not a running stitch, but a backstitch in a continuous fashion until I let go. So I just clicked the mouse and I'm going to pull this with me. And it kind of acts as a drawing tool. And I just let go, and so now it's finished. It added a cute little smiley face there. I don't know why it says running stitch. If you look up on their manual, it actually calls it a continuous backstitch button. So that I think is more accurate. It's a continuous stitch. So if you want to be able to draw around things, it would do a good job of that. And then I've been doing backstitch the whole time in black, so I thought it would be fun to show off some different colors. So I thought we could turn this into a little Miss Pac-Man kind of thing. Give it some color. Pretty lipstick. As I changed it, you would have first see the red pop up over the backstitching, and then after a moment the red went behind the backstitching. So backstitching is programmed to always come to the front of your piece. So you're going to see the backstitching ahead of time. And then instead of having black, I thought we could do, and let's say she's got some lip liner as she wants to go over everything. So again, we're going to do that continuous backstitching. And I'm going to carefully trace this and do a very bad job of lining her lips. And that is how you do the continuous stitch. You can see it's pretty close, and I chose similar shades for a reason. Again, if we go to framed view, you can get a better idea that they are going to make sure that the back stitching sticks out. And then I wanted to show how you can also work with multiple thicknesses of backstitch in a single area and have it turn out okay. So I did the eyelids, I guess, in 2 strands of 310, and now I'm going to go down to 6 strands and work up some mascara over here. In case you didn't know, I'm not really a backstitch designer. I am not the best at working with it. I mean, I like doing backstitch in real life, but when it comes to making these, there's so many other designers who are so much better at backstitch than me. So, yeah, don't use me as an example for drawing. I'm just showing you what the tools are. Please do something much nicer than my really ugly makeup face here. So there it is. It looks the same for now, but if we hit view and again go to framed view, then you can tell someone went to Sephora, they stocked up, and they are happy with how they look. And we're going to hit cancel again. Next, I wanted to go over chain stitch. Chain stitch is just like it sounds like. It is, instead of a back stitch, it's the slightly continued stitch where you work through the middle of the floss. It looks really pretty. I like using it for letters, things like that. And it also works in a very similar fashion to the continuous back stitch, except it shows up a bit more intense, I guess you could say. I guess, again, that makes sense when we're comparing it to the Backstitch. It's a nice stitch. I like chain stitch. And for some reason, it is really popping up in that framed view. I'll have to see if that's an issue that's going to continue into the printed version. I'm not sure why it did that. Sometimes it gets a little bit glitchy if you have it on. Most people that I've talked to online who have that issue, we find that if you turn off the program and then restart it, you don't have to do your whole computer, just the program, that fixes if it's getting into a little bit of a glitchy mode. So we did the chain stitching there, and then lastly, one of the things I wanted to go over before we show how this is going to show up in a chart is this little magic wand tool. This thing is amazing. So I'm going to do this in pink so that it shows up really well. This is the automatic half stitch automatic outline tool. It is really, really nice, really, really useful, especially if you're trying to get nice round shapes or you forgot to outline something. So for example, I have this circular face right here, and if I click on the yellow, it's going to round that out for me. And it looks so much more like an actual circle by adding in these half stitches all around. So if you're okay with adding a bunch of half stitches to it to make things more realistic, that can be a good option. Otherwise, if you click automatic outline, this is going to do an automatic outline in however many strands in whatever color you have selected. If I click on the black, it's going to outline that shape only. So you have to remember to do it on a full shape. What I did to make this face was I did a it was a hollow circle, and then I flood filled it with the yellow. So if I want to get the outline on, what I would need to do is to click on the yellow part, and then it's going to add that back stitching all the way around, which is pretty cool. So now we've got all these colors here, and we've got all of this done. And now what we want to do is try exporting it as a PDF. So we'll go ahead and click the entire chart. So it's going to go across the entire page. You're going to go to Style, and I want to make sure that we've got symbols on color. We're going to go without the symbols for now. And we're just going to have this as BS Knot example. This is my really ugly face. I don't want anybody else to have to claim it as theirs. And all of those look fine. Preview page, we're going to go with framed view. Again, just to make things simple. I have no idea why it's jumping up the eyebrows up there, but we will use this for now. We don't need a page map, it's not that big. I will try doing that later. I think that's something that we should go into. We don't need a cover page or footer page. On the key, this is where you want to make sure that you have strands clicked, because we've got multiple strands being used. It shows if you're doing stitches or if you have backstitch only in the color. You want to make sure that you make any notes about this. You also want to make sure it has the backstitch key. You want to make sure it has the beads clicked if you have beads on there. Otherwise, they will not show up. I also did some French knots, so I'm going to put that in as well. And it's going to tell you how many knots are done in each color. So it's going to help your stitcher figure out a bit more. But again, I like to add some more notes. So I would add in back stitching is done in the amount of strands listed. And then eyelid is in 2 strands. Lashes are in 6. Outline of the face is in 2 strands of pink. French knots should be stitched with 1 through 6 strands of floss, depending on the number indicated. So that should clear up most of the issues. And this isn't a real pattern I'm making. This was all for example of showing you what everything is like. Excuse me. I'm talking so much, my throat. Beads. And then I might just add, what do we start with? 2 millimeters? 2 millimeter, 3, 5, 6, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. In descending order. Not defending. No, that's in ascending order, which I cannot spell. Need more of my tea. In ascending order. Okay. So those are my notes. Got that all good. Gonna hit thumbnail view. And I have a feeling it's still gonna have them nasty eyebrows. So the thumbnail view looks okay. I think that might have just been a little glitch. I've had this program out for a few hours already. I was trying to figure out what was the best way to demonstrate all the cool things that you can do with backstitching, even though I have very bad backstitching skills myself. I know how to use everything. I just don't know how to design anything nice in Backstitch. I mean, there's some amazing designers out there. Just look on Etsy for backstitch, cross-stitch pattern. Oh my god. Some people have talent. And when it comes to backstitching, I do not. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And we'll save this as VS not example. Click enter and hope it loads up. All right, that's the one I'm working on right now. It did not. Oh, wait. That's just on the framed view. Okay, so on the chart, it came out okay. I'm going to zoom into 100% so that you can see. If you look at the chain stitching, it leaves it hollow to indicate that it's chain stitched. And it looks like they kind of edited it a little bit to show where they would personally make those adjustments, like 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches there, and again it looks like 3 or 4 there. It's pretty easy to tell the differences, I think. It didn't quite make it all the way around the circle with the outline. This area right here did not turn out on the chart. Let's see if it did. It did not there either. I should have caught that. You do want to be careful because that's an automatic. No, I don't want to sign in. That's an automatic tool. So yeah, they're good. And as you can see, it did most of the work for us, but you would probably need to just do another click with the magic wand right there to get everything out. All right, and it looks like it got everything down pretty good. Again, it's not giving us the symbols for these strands of DMC because those are going to be used for backstitch only, and it just doesn't have room in the program to do that. So you can either, I think the easiest way is to make a note like I did here. Zoom out so you can see the note came up fine. It shows you in the beads. I didn't have to write them all out. It lists them, except it did not get the 312 note. 3, 5, 6, 8, 10. Okay, but it got everything pretty good. Another thing I might consider doing is editing this PDF file in a software, not in Winstitch, but in, GIMP or another editor. And I would actually draw little arrows and mention how many strands to do on each place if I thought it was going to be more confusing as well. So there's a few options that you have in order to get it a little bit more clear. But that is a guide to using backstitch, beads, and French knots in Macstitch or Winstitch.